Masaharu Emiya brings us this one, which for some reason opens on a very brief recap of the series. Yeah, I don't know why either. To fill time in an episode that ran short is all I've got, cause this fills up a lot of time. And all it does is segue us into Rockman fighting a bunch of Navis based on, as the translator note says, old people stuff. Okay, yeah, this episode is taking direct inspiration from the Top Man side story from Battle Network 4. If you'll remember from that, we had to get a bunch of old people who made their own navies to be closer with their grandkids to help fix another that was made the same way. In the game, they were all depicted as normal navies, the generic grunt navi look. Obviously, while mass production navies exist in the anime setting as well, that wasn't going to fly for a social club of old people who were focused around learning Navi's customization for the aforementioned goal. This is part of a training lecture the two are doing as part of that plot to said club for those who want to learn and build that connection. Still, Netto's lecture and demonstration isn't on the up and up with older style net battlers, such as the top master himself, Tensuke. As I've discussed before, because the Net Society's timeline has been pushed significantly farther back than it was in its game version of events, these old people actually did live at a point in time where net navies were first becoming commonplace, and the difference between the then and the now is simply the introduction of utility programs that are stored and installed via the use of battle chips. Thus, while the episode is still about the same type of storyline of a cultural divide between the young and the old, it draws its basis upon differing factors of it, about some old people not wanting to accept change and new assets that can improve the ways older things are done. This shown with how Top Man basically has all the abilities of a solo net navi, but improved with support of an operator. This old man would be unstoppable if this were Beyblade. I cannot actually believe that Beyblade as a franchise is still running with new anime incarnations. Can any of you believe that? Whereas Rockman is heavily reliant on dodging and then counterattacking. But his most successful counterattacks only come with support of the battle chips. Kind of a criticism of the game is layered on that as well, when you think about it, considering it's impossible to do well against, anything in the games without collecting the chips and assembling the right folders of support, which can be a bit of an uphill climb in time sink. There is a reason the players of the games do not take issue with those that cheat the library. Tensuke does not take his loss well, blaming his failings on other factors instead of owning up to the possibility that he was wrong, and not wanting to accept changes not made by himself. Oh joy, we have old man Suzaku Kururugi in the house. How fun! This is exemplified by how he wanted to change up net battles, and that being with top duels. That's your question, Mayl? I mean, it is a legitimate one, but it's been forever since they have had a fourth wall break or acted in character as the ones that are supposed to be the deadpan snarker reactionaries, acting as the straight men to the insanity around them, as was the original characterization of them. Tensuke throws out his back in the excitement, which ironically makes Netto stress his carrying the man home from the rec center, which all ends up being a prank at his expense. When there, Tensuke invites them in and shows off his talents as a craftsman, and how long he can make his top spin. He apparently designed one that can spin forever. In his dreams. I'm only half joking with that Inception reference. His magnum opus is one he's still working on that is designed to be able to spin forever using a conservation of mechanical energy, which is insane if you actually think about it. Or at least when you think of it in the right terms. An example being how electricity is created. See, it's created through charge polarization. Using a magnet, you spin the magnet, which causes electrons in a wire wrapped around it to then move. When enough electrons move, you get a charged current of electricity. Mechanical energy, the spinning of the magnet, is turned into potential electrical energy. So what then happens when a top maker creates a top that spins on its own forever? You have an object that could potentially generate unlimited potential mechanical energy that, if hooked up correctly, can turn into unlimited potential electrical energy. That is insane, and why in a lot of media, it is actually a rule of cool factor to see the power core of something begin to spin at higher and higher speeds as it provides more energy and thus becomes stronger. So why did he stop the invention of this marvelous feat of engineering? Why, to learn how to net battle like the young ones do. Simply to connect with his grandson Kosuke, who wanted to play with him. Hearing this, Netto and Mayl offer to help this scrub get good, but only if they can wrangle him properly. Mayl is absolutely savage when she wants to be. Thus the training begins, but as amateur tutors, I think they're a bit ahead of where their pupils need to be, as part of said training involves listing off chip combos that go into discovered program advances, when they more need to start them on how to chain chip combos, which can be just as, if not more effective. Well, that and the importance of area steal as the greatest battle chip ever, best used in combination with the best program advance ever. But really, a lot of this episode is the repackaging of gameplay elements around the battle chip system. And unfortunately, it's all Greek to him, which points out something I've been addressing with how poorly some of the writers have treated Netto. In that it is very difficult to learn when you are placed in an environment that does not encourage learning, or is led by an individual who is not good at creating engagement with the material being taught. It's not always on the individual who isn't learning, especially if they truly want to learn. But some factor prevents it, or they're discouraged from wanting to. If Netto really is as stupid as some of the writers write him as, or he's completely incapable of doing his schoolwork despite the growth as a character we've seen from him, and how smart he can be in situations, then what does that say about those around him who are responsible for the environment he learns in, if he can so easily excel at other things? This kind of thought is why I go off on the idiot protagonist thing so often, as writers who like to make use of it really don't think about these things and why characters would act the way they do. If they have all the right assets around them to be smart and are still an idiot, or was in situations where they would have learned to make the right decision and still make the wrong ones, then there's only so long that can go on before something has to give. Refusing to do so, or compensating for that by bringing down the intelligence of the rest of the cast by slaving them to that, then breaks a story. Here, though, that isn't a problem. Tensuke's malaise towards learning comes from his own hurdles of being an old man, and being too stubborn to open himself up, alongside the kids, and also Higure, who briefly gets roped into this, just throwing too much at him at once. An example, for the Yu-Gi-Oh fans in my audience, just try throwing a new player or an old one who dropped out over a decade ago into not just playing archetypes, but fusion, synchro, exceed, pendulum, and link summoning mechanics all at once. Like, I know adults that love the game and used to play, but stopped because they skipped a Master Rule format change and then lost all sight of how to play with the newer stuff introduced. Hell, when we used to do the dual streams on this channel, a lot of them tended to stop by. Which is ironic considering how much that game survives these days on solely legacy support tailored to those players, and not actually introducing new functional mechanics that no one really wants to use, or is otherwise being screwed over by the power creep. But that's Tensuke's hang-up. He doesn't truly want to do it, but Kosuke is important to him. So when he shows his grandson his perpetual motion tops, and they go crazy because they got infected with stray viruses, somehow the episode makes this Higure's fault, and I don't see why that was necessary. Top Man finally has to step up and battle viruses before his errant creation actually hurts someone. Ah, the anti-spiral is upon us. And thus has to put everything he actually learned up to task. With that, Rockman can then cover the rest in shutting down the errant creation. Thus, the old man gets to learn the merit of something new, and gets to properly bond with his grandson over what he himself can now pass on. And thankfully, there is no top soul anywhere in sight. The wrap-up. We have top men for Tensuke and Top Man. We have Old Man Yells at Cloud, once again to Tensuke and his conduct towards others. Once more from a story by Masaru Amiya, this is basically filler, as we're nearing the season working to wrap itself up, and thus we needed a bit more Battle Network 4 adaptation fodder to add to that. And there's nothing really wrong with it. Everyone's fully in character, things going nuts in a more exaggerated way fits well, I've got no real complaints. Even Tensuke manages to be a bit more endearing here than his game incarnation by the better expression of the old man mannerisms, helped by the entire class of old people who were more engaged than him in learning the tools of the trade early on, which he contrasts against. And once more, instead of punishing or insulting a character, all you really need is a good contrasting characters to have a good, harmless, fluffy comedy plot.